Coming up on Network Africa. 10 killed in renewed clashes in Ethiopia's Amhara region. Fighters from the Al-Shabaab group retake captured areas from Somalia's army. Plus, Sudanese army chief rules out talks with rapid support forces while on tour in Egypt. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Militant in Lagos. We begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where at least 14 people have been killed in the northeastern part of the country. According to the army, the attack was attributed to the Kodeko community militiamen who carried out the operation on a fisherman's camp in Gobu village. That attack lasted just over 2 hours, leaving 9 civilians, 1 soldier and 4 Kodeko militia dead. Violence has been surging across the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, where conflict has flared for decades. More than 120 armed groups have been fighting in the region, most for land and control of mines with valuable minerals, while some groups are trying to protect their communities. And from one tragedy to another, but this time in Ethiopia's Restiv, talking about the Restiv Amhara region, where 10 people have been killed as a result of renewed clashes there. After a week of relative calm, fighting flared up again over the weekend, which continued until Monday between local militias and government troops. According to eyewitness, the city's main hospital sustained damage after it was hit by heavy artillery. A doctor at the hospital also noted that at least 5 people who were visiting patients and more than 20 civilians who were moving near the facility were wounded. Fighting has also been reported in or around the Marcos and Fontaine Salem towns, as well as other small towns and villages in the region. Investigators from the United Nations Human Rights have found that more than 180 people have died in recent clashes. VOA's Maya Misika joins us now from the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. Hi, Maya. Help us understand what really is fueling this renewed clashes between local militias and the government troops.
Thank you. So tensions between the Ethiopian government and militia in the country's second most populous region, Amhara region, has been going on for some time now. The Amhara militia, known as Fano, along with other forces, had fought alongside the Ethiopian government, federal government, during the 2-year Tigray War. And when that ended, that came to an end in November last year. So during the war, the Amhara militia, known as Fano, again took over this long contested land between themselves and Tigrayan administration. And so that land to this day remains a very contentious issue. It's yet to be resolved, and it's still under provisional rule of Amhara regional administration. So at the end of the war, there were many reports coming out that the peace deal had not involved representatives of the Amhara militia in a sufficient way. And so part of the peace deal was also, resolving the land that they were fighting over. So in April of this year, when the federal government ordered all the militia and all the special forces that had been fighting in the war to integrate into the formal government security structure, this did not go down well in Amhara region at all. So protests erupted across multiple cities. There were roadblocks, internet shutdowns, and fighting opened up between the Ethiopian National Defense Forces and the Amhara militia, the Fano.
So earlier this month, a state of emergency was declared, and there appeared to be relative calm. It seems as though authorities are finding it difficult to curtail the violence now. Maya? Oh dear. We appear to have lost Maya at this time, talking to us about the situation, the renewed violence in Amhara region. Maya, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, just to get your thoughts, when there was a state of emergency declared earlier this month, there appeared to have been some relative calm. So how are authorities trying to curtail the violence now?
So I'm not sure if the connection was, clear, but the insecurity reached its peak in early August this year. So at that time, the Amhara regional government sent an official request for backup from the federal government to secure the region from Fano militia. And so, but even throughout these briefings that the government would give on the state of emergency, they would still kind of announce that Fano militia had taken control over certain areas in Amhara region, and they had released prisoners even. But since the declaration of the state of emergency, the federal government has taken control over bigger cities and bigger towns. And that, the briefings also say that the security is being restored and that farming is even resuming in some places, but the fighting has not stopped in smaller towns in the region. I was speaking to people and healthcare professionals in areas like Debre Tabor, Fnota Salam, which you earlier mentioned, Jiga, and other small towns in the region, and there has been heavy fighting between the two parties, injuring civilians and property.
In terms of the number of people, there are many reports out there, 180 we understand, some reports, others are saying 10. What are the figures that you're hearing?
So it's hard to get a definite number from my understanding because road closures are also affecting people coming into the hospitals. But healthcare professionals I spoke to in Debre Tabor, a town in Amhara region, told me that more than 20 people had come with injuries on Monday after the fighting kind of subsided after 3 days of fighting. And a couple of weeks before that, in a city called Fnota Salam, there was a drone attack that killed more than 25 people. The Amhara Medical Association, who is trying to collect the data on this, has informed me, a representative from there has informed me that it's more than 100 people who have died already and more than 1,000 who have been injured. And it's hard to have a definite figure because telecom is not working in some areas completely, and internet has been shut off for the past month. And the numbers could also be higher because the official report, because people are also dying where the attacks are happening or in their homes.
So essentially a very dire, difficult situation there. Many thanks, Maya, VOA's Maya Misika, joining us from Addis Ababa. Thanks again. Away from Ethiopia, fighters from the Al-Shabaab Islamist militant group have announced recapturing of at least 2 locations that was earlier captured by Somalia's army. That's the Somalian town of El Bur and a nearby village, Wabho. During the latest offensive, both sides issued a battle report indicating significant sufferings on each other's targets. According to sources at a military hospital base, at least 50 wounded soldiers were brought in for treatment after a fierce battle for control of the Somalian housing society, Cowes Wayne. However, Somalia's President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud has pledged to defeat Al-Shabaab within months. Into the latest in Sudan, its army chief, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, is in Egypt meeting President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. It's the first time that Mr. al-Burhan leaves Sudan since the start of the conflict with the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces on April the 15th. The trip comes a day after the Sudanese army chief dashed hopes of talks to end the prolonged conflict. The Egyptian president has backed General Burhan during the war, but has also been pushing for dialogue. Egypt is also worried about an even greater influx of refugees should the fighting in Sudan continue. Millions have been driven from their homes and a humanitarian crisis has escalated since the start of the conflict. However, successive talks have failed to bring the fighting to a complete halt. Well, let's talk to VOA's correspondent Edward Uranin, who joins us from Cairo in Egypt. Hi, Edward. Give us an itinerary of the Sudanese Army Chief's visit to Cairo.
Well, he was in the Sudanese capital or around the Sudanese capital up until several days ago. And then he emerged from, I would say, hiding. I don't know. I think some people knew where he was. But anyway, he went to the Sudanese coastal port city of Port Sudan. He chaired a meeting of the interim government, or what goes for an interim government, in Port Sudan yesterday. And he headed to Cairo airport and then on to Al Alamein, where he met President Sisi late this morning and early this afternoon.
What can we say about the discussions that they had? Egypt has been pushing for dialogue between the warring parties and is concerned about the refugee crisis. What do you think both men discussed?
Well, analysts are saying that the real key meetings are taking place between the experts on both sides that came with General Burhan and the Egyptian experts that were meeting their counterparts, their Sudanese counterparts. Of course, President Sisi, Egyptian President Sisi, is an intelligence man, and General Burhan, the Sudanese army commander, also has quite a bit of intelligence experience. So no doubt they did share information about the latest developments. I would expect General Sisi probably has better information than General Burhan, since he has access to all of Egypt's military channels, whereas Burhan has been in hiding and probably didn't even have access to his own military channels. So perhaps he got a good information, what's the word I want, a good sense of what's been going on, more so than when he was back in Sudan.
And we hear the Sudanese army chief ruling out talks with rapid support forces while he was on tour in Egypt. One wonders how, the president of Egypt feels about General Burhan's decision.
It's difficult to say, but on the surface of it, General Burhan is supported by Saudi Arabia, and the Rapid Support Forces commander, General Daglu, is supported by the United Arab Emirates. And they were both on the same side during the conflict in Yemen. They were both fighting for Saudi Arabia against the Houthis in Yemen. And so, I mean, they've fallen apart because of this conflict, but there are two allies, the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, should theoretically be able to get them back together again. I don't know why they haven't been able to do that.
Oh, and perhaps on a final note, how are Egyptians weighing in at his arrival in Egypt?
Well, I think Egyptians are proud that their country is playing a diplomatic role in this conflict right now, and they're also pleased that perhaps there could be an end to this conflict very soon, because there are a lot of Sudanese refugees that are have arrived in Egypt recently, at least 300,000 Sudanese refugees, according to the UN, and there are already like 4 or 5 million Sudanese that live in Egypt anyway. So I think it's a strain on the country, even though I think Egypt has been trying to be welcoming to the Sudanese refugees.
When is he expected to leave Egypt? Do we have that information?
The Egyptian media has not been entirely clear on that, and I'm not stationed at Cairo airport, so I can't tell you. But my guess is that he would probably be going to Jeddah in Saudi Arabia very soon. Perhaps they're weighing the possibility of going back to Port Sudan and then on to Jeddah, or down to Jeddah first and then back to Port Sudan. It is also unclear whether General Burhan is going to go to the United Arab Emirates or not. If he does, that's a positive sign, because it would mean that there is some negotiation going on to end the conflict. Otherwise, it means we're still in for more conflict.
And we'll be watching the developments. We'd like to thank you, VOA's correspondent Edward Uranian, joining us from Egypt. Thanks again.
My pleasure.
We continue in Sudan, where the United Nations Population Fund has deployed health and social workers in West Darfur region amid the deteriorating humanitarian situation there. This move is to help thousands of vulnerable women and girls who need urgent reproductive health care attention.
Moving to Sudan, we have a quick update for you from our colleagues in the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. In West Darfur, the UN Population Fund has deployed health and social workers to support thousands of displaced and vulnerable women and girls with reproductive health care and protection services, including for survivors of gender-based violence. In eastern Sudan yesterday, UNFPA delivered enough productive health supplies to support 150,000 women and girls for 3 months at the Port Sudan Maternity Hospital. In Gadaref State, teams from the UN refugee agencies have been distributing cash assistance to more than 830 Sudanese families forced to flee the conflict. And the White Nile State, UNICEF and its partners have launched a child survival campaign. More than 43,000 children under the age of 5 are receiving measles vaccination. Children suffering from severe acute malnutrition are also being treated immediately after screening.
Meanwhile, the power of art to uplift not just children but any individual in the most trying times is one to reckon with. This is why displaced artists took it upon themselves to bring hope to children in refugee camps who fled the war-torn Sudan amid the prolonged conflict between the Sudanese army and rapid support forces. Take a look.
Displaced artists, driven by a desire to offer solace and respite, stepped up to entertain children at camps in the Madani capital of Al Jazeera State in east-central Sudan, 4 months after the armed conflict broke out in Sudan. Artists can be seen engaging the young minds in support and fun activities, aiming to provide a temporary escape from the hardships of their circumstances. Mawaheb Al-Mahi, a specialist in puppet theatre and teaching and entertainment aids, highlighted the profound impact the artistic endeavors have had on the children.
Since we, performers, musicians and plastic artists came here, all the children have become our brothers and sisters. They even cry when their parents ask them to leave the center. They consider this place as their home, not a refugee center.
The deep connection formed between the children and the artists demonstrated the camp's transformation into a sanctuary where the arts bridged the gap between their reality and a world of creativity. Fadia Al-Ser, a member of the National Band for Folk Instruments, sheds light on the incredible therapeutic potential of art.
The Great Art House is known for its effects on people, irrespective of their feelings. Using arts, we managed to improve the status of people who came from a war zone with a very bad psychological state.
Clearly, the artist's intention went beyond just entertaining. They understood and harnessed the therapeutic ability of creative expression. According to data from the United Nations, more than 4.6 million people have fled their homes in Sudan, where war has raged for more than 4 months between the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces.
We turn our attention now to the politics in Gabon, where, in a shocking development, the opposition has claimed victory following Saturday's presidential election, but no official result has been released. President Ali Bongo was running for a 3rd term, which would also be an extension of rule by the Bongo dynasty, which stretches back more than half a century. Speaking at a press conference, the campaign manager of the main opposition candidate, Albert Ondo Osa, announced without offering proof that the partial vote count was in their favor and he had a clear lead. The campaign manager, Mike Joktain, said, quote, "What is now expected of President Bongo is that he accepts the sovereign choice of the Gabonese people, that he respects it, and that he organizes without bloodshed the transfer of power to Mr. Osa." Despite the opposition claims, the electoral body has remained silent over progress of the vote count and when the final result will be released. Well, staying with election updates, South Africa, Russia and China have congratulated Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa following his controversial poll win over the weekend. South Africa, Russia and China are key trade partners of Zimbabwe, and their backing of the poll is significant as Zimbabwe is facing the prospect of further Western isolation and sanctions after criticism of the elections. The opposition Citizens Coalition for Change is still tallying its own results before deciding on a concrete plan of what to do next. But the congratulatory messages to President Mnangagwa are perhaps a reflection that Zimbabwe's main allies are ready to move on and accept the results. The U.S. mission in Nigeria has announced the successful conclusion of the Nigerian Young African Leaders Initiative, YALI Network's 6th annual national conference themed Beyond Limits, Innovation for Sustainable Development. The two-day event, which held in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, brought together over 400 young Nigerian leaders from 36 Nigerian states between the ages of 18 and 35 to foster collaboration and drive sustainable development across the nation through keynote speakers, panel discussions, and interactive activities, all focused on the participants' role in sustainable development. The conference left 5 YALI Network members with on-the-spot job offers as well as other prizes. The YALI Network National Conference served as a testament to the strong partnership between the United States and Nigeria in supporting youth empowerment and sustainable development. And the United Nations Integrated Stabilization Mission, MINUSMA, in Mali is racing to withdraw its peacekeepers from the country amid the security crisis there. Special Representative of the Secretary General for Mali, Gassim Wayne, has hinted that the process of the withdrawal is going as planned, as the deadline is slated for December the 31st this year.
That process so far is proceeding well, and every effort is made to ensure that we indeed complete this process by the agreed deadline of 31st December 2023. This is a very complex undertaking. The mission was built over a period of 10 years, and we have to close it in 6 months. And Mali, as you know, is landlocked, infrastructure is limited, and insecurity is a reality. And carrying out this task of withdrawal and drawdown within the agreed timeline is not an easy undertaking, but we're determined to do everything possible to make this, to ensure that this is happening. We did not anticipate such as the current situation in Niger could potentially impact some of the logistical aspects of the operations, but we're monitoring the situation and will adjust as necessary to make sure that we comply with the agreed deadline of December 31. With the UN withdrawing, especially from remote...
And that's our program, Network Africa. Many thanks for watching. I'm Millicent Walker.